No other college has ever done so many excavations of the French and Indian War. And it's absolutely true. We've become specialists. And yet for students who've never dug before, it's a great way to see if this is a hobby they want or a career they might want. And I think it's so great that SUNY would be sponsoring summer digs like this, where people from all walks of life can come and learn and have a great time. Well, more and more, archaeology is public archaeology. You know, thousands of people are fascinated by this sort of thing. They want to see what we're finding as we find it. So, well, not at this second, but usually there are tourists lined up around that fence. What are you finding? What are you finding? And diggers who are trying not to make eye contact eventually will look up and, oh, I'm working on a such and such. And then the questions will just flow. I'll admit among ourselves we use slang terms like goodies. In front of the public we'll say artifacts. But also as we talk to our classes, we like to make the point it's not about how much you personally have found on a dig. If you're part of a larger team, it's a team effort to learn about the past. If somebody in another pit has found the nicest artifacts, I've got to be able to live with that, knowing that I contributed to that process. And I think with American history, we're digging an historic fort. Well, American history and things like soldiers' diaries, they'll give you a sense of what daily life was like. But if you actually dig up the remains of the soldiers, their huts, their tents, the musket balls they left behind, the pottery, the butchered animal bones from the dumps that tell us what they were eating, it gives us a host of very ordinary pieces of information about what non-famous people were doing. You know, you hear about the battles, you hear about the generals, but what were the privates doing for 360 days a year, the days that they weren't actually finding? What was it like to be an early American fighting on the frontier, far from home, far from the cities? Were they eating fresh meat? Were they eating deer all the time? Were they eating salt pork and salt beef brought in barrels? And dried peas and beans? Boring. And yet, when you dig a soldier's stump and find butchered bones everywhere, especially from wild animals, it's like, okay, they had fresh meat. They were doing what they could to make their lives a little bit more comfortable. So for an archaeologist, we feel like we're connecting with real people and not just generals all the time. And I think that's special.